Usually, when we cover foreign policy stories, it's the same theme over and over. The U.S. gets involved somewhere, we fuck the place up, we destabilize the region, we create more enemies, and then we ruin that part of the world for at least a decade, and that's being overly kind. But today's news on the issue of foreign policy is even worse. It's that theme plus one. At least, it's even more than that, really. Quote, over the past decade, the U.S. has poured unimaginable amounts of money into training and equipping Afghanistan's army. Now, the Department of Defense's office in charge of auditing the process is saying many of the 747,000 weapons given to the ANSF, that's the Afghanistan Army, their security forces, have gone missing and could end up fueling escalating attacks by Taliban insurgents. So the Office Inspector General released a report that said, quote, the Pentagon set up 2 inventory systems to track the weapons in 2010, but incompatibilities between the programs led to, quote, missing serial numbers, inaccurate shipping and receiving dates, and duplicate records. That produced a logistical nightmare and caused some weapons to go missing even before they were shipped abroad. So, how many weapons have slipped into the wrong hands in Afghanistan? Well, nobody knows an exact number, but what we do know is, in 2013 alone, we fucked up and sent 83,000 more AK-47s than necessary to the region. Because where is there a better place in the world to just leave 83,000 extra guns than Afghanistan? And on top of that, because of the fuck-ups in the tracking system that we put into place, we don't know where any of the weapons are today. Any of them. Any of them. It's as if Curly, Larry, and Moe have been running our foreign policy post-World War II. I mean, we've become this massive joke post-World War II. A joke that's both idiotic but also corrupt. I don't know if a joke could be corrupt. That doesn't seem to make sense. But we're both idiotic and corrupt with our foreign policy, whether it's the military-industrial complex and, you know, these tremendous no-bid contracts going to Halliburton and Raytheon and KBR and you name the defense contractor. And what they do is they give money to the politicians, so the politicians give them these contracts, even though oftentimes we don't need what they're making. There are thousands of Abrams tanks sitting in a desert in Nevada right now when the military said, hey guys, we don't really need any more tanks. The Congress created more of the tanks and gave a contract to Abrams to create the tanks, even though we didn't need them. Why? Again, it all comes back to campaign contributions. It all comes back to that's what the military-industrial complex is. And what we have here is a situation where we're arming Afghanistan. Why we're doing that is already beyond me because that seems incredibly dumb. And then we send too many weapons there, and we don't know where the fuck they ended up anyway. God, it's so amazing. Did you know, and look, this isn't just with Afghanistan, how we oftentimes fuck up and do this stuff. One of the deals that we have going with Egypt, we give them billions of dollars a year in aid. And then what do? We give them U.S. tax dollars, and then they immediately send that money back to us, and we give them armament. We give them tanks and helicopters and guns. And then, of course, as we saw a few months back, what happens? Oftentimes, the Egyptian army uses the weapons that we gave them to crack down on peaceful protesters in the street. And it's the same ruse over and over again. We're arming some of the most ridiculous, insane, brutal regimes in the world. I mean, it's so backwards, man, and it's all for the money. And then when you see how you mix that in with quite a bit of incompetence on top of it, and you're like, holy shit, this really is a government run by the Three Stooges. Here's a radical idea. How about we never arm anybody who we have even one question mark about? How about that? Let's say everything went perfectly smooth with this whole deal to arm Afghanistan's defense forces and their government. How do we know that those people are always going to be on our side? They're people who are armed in Afghanistan. There's no chance that the people we gave the weapons to are also, I don't know, Islamic fundamentalists, religious extremists, people who could break off into some sort of warlord rebel faction. How do you know you're giving weapons to people that are going to end up being our ally forever? And even if they are going to be our ally forever, does that mean you should necessarily give them weapons? I got a lot of people that are close friends of mine. I don't go over their house and say, hey, I like you. Here's an AR-15. Why? Because I'm not an idiot. Because it's such a weird thing to do. Like, oh, we like you. Here's weapons. Look, this is the same mistake that the Reagan administration made. I mean, think about it. We gave arms, weapons, you name it, to the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen were fighting the Soviet Union at the time. We were so anti-communist and anti-Soviet Union that we abided by this idea that the enemy of our enemy is our friend. And later on, the Mujahideen broke up into the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And then they fought us with the weapons we gave them. Look, it's the same thing over and over. In Syria, people who are screaming to arm Syrian rebels, the Republicans, the same people that fucking were screaming to arm the Mujahideen, the same people that want to arm people in Afghanistan. Okay, look, there are plenty of people in the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, that are fighting Assad, right, as part of this rebel movement, that are secular people and they just want to take their country back from what they view as a dictator in Bashar Assad. And there's no doubt Bashar Assad has done some horrible things. But the idea that we can properly vet the people who are in the FSA, and we know that, hey, all of the weapons that go to them, well, it's all going to work out because all those people are always going to be on our side. That's not true at all. Some of the people in the FSA might be sympathizers with Al-Nusra Front, which is a jihadist group linked with Al-Qaeda fighting in Syria. Some of them might be affiliated with ISIS. Some of them might not necessarily be affiliated with those groups, but they might be, religious fundamentalists and Islamic fundamentalists that are just part of the FSA. If we arm them and then Assad falls, what happens? Who fills that power vacuum? Maybe a secular person in the FSA gets control. Okay, that's hunky-dory, and then everything would be fantastic. But what if that doesn't happen? What if it's any of the other people in the rebel movement? An Islamic fundamentalist in FSA, a rare one that happens to be there? What if it's somebody in Al-Nusra Front, Al-Qaeda affiliated? What if it's ISIS? What if it's anybody else in the rebel factions that aren't friends to the U.S. or friends to the Western world at all? What if it's a more brutal regime that replaces them? But the U.S. in its infinite stupidity says, no, we should arm them and we should get involved. Why? Why would we do that? It happens everywhere, man. Let's arm people in Ukraine. Let's arm people in Syria. Let's arm people in Afghanistan. How about we don't arm any of them?